Welcome, new and old friends. I just have a couple things to say, and then the stories will begin. Before you drift off into the dream realm, please remember to like, subscribe, share, and comment. If you'd like to find out about my social links, my website, how to help the channel, check the description box. Now turn off your lights, make sure your doors and windows are locked. It's time to dream. I Thought It Was a Watermelon by Anonymoose. Kind of a strange glitch in the Matrix, so bear with me, but I feel like I somehow manifested the reality I wanted. My partner and I went to the store together for the first time in a while yesterday, so that I could get a fruit tray and he could get some snacks. We ended up grabbing a random tray on our way through to find his cheese snacks. When we got home and cracked it open, we realized we got the wrong one. I wanted one with cantaloupe in it, and we picked up the one that had watermelon. I mentioned this to him, but said I'd eat the watermelon anyways, I supposed. He tried it and said that he didn't actually like watermelon, but it had honeydew, which he did like, so that was fine. I say I ate about half of the watermelon before we put it up for the night. I went to work and then took a nap when I got home. Well, I just got up and we got the tray back out, and when I opened it, where there had been watermelon was now all cantaloupe. I kind of blankly stared at it and processed to turn to him and say, "Wasn't this watermelon yesterday?" He said, "Yes. Remember we had the conversation about how I don't like watermelon?" I proceeded to show him the tray, and he is just as confused as I am. I then checked the list of fruit on the tray to see if it had been layered with watermelon on top and cantaloupe on the bottom or something. Nope, watermelon isn't listed on the box at all. Not only that, but I remember there being leftover watermelon, and there's no trace of it now. We're now completely confused. What a strange glitch. The serial killer's letter to the police stated that on this date he would begin killing people using the instrument of their own sins as his murder weapons. And sure enough, an unfortunate victim turned up today, stabbed to death with a snapped-off turn signal indicator of his own BMW. I Saw What Happened Today Last Week by Zhenaz. On March 21st, China played against Singapore in 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifications, AFC second round. I live in North America, so the match was in the morning. When I checked China's social platform at 11 a.m. that day, Zihu, Bali, and my QQ group chats, I saw a news saying that China won 4-1 and Wu Li scored 2 goals and 1 assist, with many people discussing the performance. Not bad, I said to myself, and then I closed the website without reading the actual post. I went on to do other things. I didn't fall asleep or dream of the event, nor was I influenced by any substance or mental issues. When I opened the website again around 1 a.m., the title of the post looked different. Looked like China had a disappointing and frustrating 2-2 draw, and people were mad everywhere on the internet. I hadn't watched our national team play for a long time, just like what a Chinese who want a stable mental and happy life would do, so I didn't really pay attention. I thought that maybe those posts earlier were talking about a previous match against Singapore, and they were pushing it to my main pages because new relays as a result of the disappointing draw. And guess what happened several hours ago? China won 4-1 against Singapore, with Wu Li scoring 2 goals and 1 assist. China hasn't played against Singapore for a long time, and the 4-1 score never appeared between the two teams before. The score actually hadn't appeared in the match result records of earlier teams for the years. I know Malaysia 4-1 Singapore last year, but that was different, not what I read. The chat history of QQ is stored. I checked it, and apparently the score 4-1 was never mentioned until several hours ago. I contacted my family members and friends in China, but no one could explain what I read on March 21st last week. Quick side note for me, if I mispronounced anything, I'm very sorry. "Don't worry, it won't hurt. We picked out a wonderful branch just for you," said the swinging corpse of my sister, pointing to a noose which now dangled nearby. Thomas cried out when he saw his 2 daughters hanging from the gnarled oak, and then one of them opened her eyes and said, "Don't be sad, Daddy. Please. We have a branch for you, too." Never experienced anything like this. Multiplying game pieces. By nomorrplease. So I have this favorite bar I go to every weekend. It's this alternative goth bar with a game board called Zigzag. If you're not familiar, it's basically a bunch of little pucks and 2 sides of board, both with rubber bands that you use to try and fling the pucks to the other person's side. I've gotten very good at the game, and very few people ever beat me. On Saturday, I followed the tradition of going over to the Zigzag table to play a game with 2 friends tagging along. Please note that at this point, we had all just been sharing 1 drink at the house, and we were barely even tipsy. I saw the board only had 6 pucks. The game generally comes with 12 when you buy it, but for as long as I've been going, it's never been a full amount. 'Cause yeah, it's a bar and things get lost. I played with 10, but in the last several months it's usually 8. And then this last few weeks it's only been 7, so we usually put 1 to the side and play with 6. On this day, there were only 6, and I expressed a little annoyance that the pieces kept disappearing when I love this game so much. As a joke, I picked up 4 of the 6 pieces and said, "Well, now everyone can just play with 2, and then dramatically threw the 4 pieces down the board. Somehow, 10 pucks came flying out of my hands and scattered along the board, making it a full set of 12. I was utterly baffled and just stared shocked and then kept saying, "How did that happen?" My 2 friends thought I was doing a magic trick and asked me how, until I promised them I had no idea what was going on, and they could see how truly confused and shocked I was. We all sat there trying to understand for 5 minutes and then walked away, now creeped out by the board. I told a few people, but no one believed me. I ended up playing a few games later with the randoms, and we had all 12 pieces. One of the people who didn't believe me said that they had at least seen earlier that there were definitely only 6, and now there are 12. What in the hell? I have literally never experienced anything like this before, and I wasn't on any psychedelics, and I wasn't drunk, and 2 of my friends saw it also. I have no explanation. "Are all the people in the village equal?" asked the young man. 10 points for a man, 10 points for a woman, 5 for a child, and 15 for a pregnant woman. I explained to the young soldier as I handed over some ammo. Teleporting fish? By some dude somewhere 12. So me and my friends go swimming on the weekends, and we have this toy fish we always take with us and mess around with it, either throwing it or picking it up from the pool floor or playing football with it underwater. We go to the pool at the gym where this is also a hot tub. My friend told me to drop the fish in the hot tub while we were in it, and then we could not find this fish anywhere. We were super confused of where it could have gone since there wasn't any holes big enough for the fish to have gone through in the hot tub, but concluded despite this it must have got sucked into one of the hot tub jets. We were pretty disappointed to have lost our fish toy, but figured we wouldn't see it again. However, once we got back in his car for him to take me home after our swim, I noticed that somehow the fish was back in the little storage slot on his dashboard we normally kept it in. I was like, what the fuck, it's the fish? To him, I thought he was messing with me and had grabbed the fish in the hot tub and pretended it was missing. He also thought I was messing with him. Once we confirmed neither of us played a trick on the other, we both felt pretty freaked out and spent the whole drive being like, what the fuck? How did the fish get there? It makes no sense. Please, please save my son, the mother cried. My heart sank at the fact that I gave up my body to help my lifelong best friend have a child she desperately wanted, and she didn't think twice to choose a fetus over me. Red Bag Tab Glitch by katimius. I made myself a sandwich this morning because I was hungry. You know that little plastic tab we use to close the bag of bread? Yeah, the tab that disappears all the time and leaves us doing the spin and tuck to keep the bread fresh? Per the usual, I was looking for the tab after I was done making my sandwich. Of course, it's not anywhere within sight. I lift the plate with the sandwich on it. It's not under the plate. As I set the plate down, I hear this little click. I lift the plate again, and lo and behold, the tab was there, probably just stuck under the plate. As I reached out to grab the tab, a second identical tab fell down from the bottom of the plate. I just thought, holy shit, I've experienced a glitch. I gotta tell the whole world. Side note, that's when I made the first comment on your community post. But I was hungry. Rather than closing the bag with one of the tabs, I did the spin and tuck. I set the tabs next to each other on the counter. I thought I'd take a photo of them when I was done eating. I know a photo is no solid proof that I experienced a glitch, but it's something. I ate my sandwich at the counter right next to the tabs while browsing on my phone. When I was done eating and ready to take a photo, there was only one tab on the counter. I checked the counter, the floor, the loaf of bread, and under the plate. No second tab. There was no wind, no pets nearby, and I certainly didn't hear any sounds that indicated the tab fell or was moved. I have no idea what happened to the second tab. Side note, that's when I made my second comment on your post. I didn't feel scared or chilled by this incident. I just thought it was hilarious and couldn't stop laughing about it. I told my husband, knowing full well he wouldn't believe me. To my surprise, he smiled, nodded, and said, 22 people die each year from eating that tab. It's a joke from a stand-up comedian. Nevertheless, I'm glad I'm alive and well, despite experiencing this rather innocent double glitch. They say I'm a sadistic killer using ancient methods to torture people for fun, but that's not true at all. She frowns at her captive and says, "The goal here isn't to hurt you, only to use experimental archaeology to learn whether scaling truly makes the flailing smoother, considering those primitive tools." Teleported again, this time multiple times, by Almost-Jaded. Hello again, Glitch. Been a while. Like years. Most of you probably don't know my stories. I'm not going to rehash them again. If you're that bored, you can scroll all the way back in my history. As usual, I'll provide details for any locals. 22 months ago to the day, I relocated from Vegas to southern Mexico, Las Acrocas area. My previous experiences happened in Vegas area and partly in Utah. I haven't had one of these instances in several years, and no glitches of any kind since moving here. Until today. On my way to a client's house in West El Paso/Sunland Park, I had driven to this house half a dozen times in the last 2 weeks. I know the way by heart, but I still use nav because there's major construction on I-10 between Cacruz and El Paso right now, and Google lets me know about closures and delays. Today, it says there's a 27-minute delay. That's the first weirdness. I practically flew through the construction. All the red spots on the nav just weren't. No delays. Made the usual 55-minute trip these days in under 40. When I got to the Sunland Parkway exit, the nav still said my ETA was the same despite this. Weird. And here's where it goes off the rails. H client lives off of Mesa Hills, past Mesa. 2 different roads, and this matters, so please keep it straight. Sunland Parkway goes through to Mesa. Both of these are large arterials with both of the businesses. Beyond Mesa, from the freeway, Sunland turns into mostly residential neighborhoods. Mesa Hill is a much smaller road that leads to the same nicer houses up to the hill, again past Mesa. But it winds down from Mesa and curves into Sunland Parkway between the freeway and Mesa. Hopefully you follow all of that. Because I'm early, I decided I wanted to stop and grab a taco. The nav says to turn onto Mesa Hill, but I decided to go straight and stop at Taco Bell that's right off of SP/Mesa intersection. So I go straight, stop at the next lighty, go through the intersection, and suddenly I'm in the residential park of Sunland Parkway, past Mesa. Like I drove through a portal, and I'm just really confused. That's a fair way up the road. No way I zoned out that stretch of road in that time it took me to cross an intersection. Also, less than 2 minutes have passed on the clock. Whatever, U-turn, get to the light that should be Mesa. And I'm back by the freeway. There's the Ulta, the Stanton Optical, Barnes & Noble, Best Buy. I never crossed Mesa. If I continued straight, I'd be back on the I-10. Now, I'm really weirded out. I look at the clock. Less than 3 minutes have passed. That's impossible. I turn onto Mesa Hill. I drive on Mesa Hill for way too long. Landmarks are out of place. I feel like I've been driving for 15 minutes. I look at the clock. It's been 4. I get on Mesa Hills, at least to exist here, I guess. I'm still way ahead of schedule, which Shouldn't it be possible with the distances I've covered? I turned left to head back towards Sunland Parkway, and then apparently interdimensional Taco Bell. I noticed that all the construction that was on the mesa last time I was here a couple days ago is gone. So, well, that's nice. I get to my Taco Bell. I turn back onto Mesa and head back to Mesa Hill. All the construction is back. All of it. The left lane is torn up. There's a cone and trucks and crap, and I can't turn left onto Mesa Hill because the construction is blocking it. None of this was here 5 minutes ago. I look up at the clock and suddenly I'm running late. All the time that I should have taken to get up and back to Sunland and then up to Mesa Hill is suddenly back on the clock. Either that or I spent 17 minutes in the drive-thru. That would be it, except it isn't. I worked for about 90 minutes. I look up at the clock, over 3 hours have passed. I didn't fall asleep or anything. My client would have noticed. I have no idea where the extra 2 hours went. What the fuck? Screw this. Now it's rush hour. I better hurry to get home. I'm going to be in traffic forever. Got home through the construction during rush hour through the areas Nav said were backed up in 32 minutes. I wasn't driving fast. I'm confused and feel very detached. I didn't like this. And just to give you guys a heads up, Opie has given me permission to read the backlog of their stories, so those will be showing up in other Glitch in the Matrix videos for you guys. As we pass the bottle of hooch around the campfire, we regard one another with stories of the worst things we had ever done. Everyone started laughing when I said I poisoned the alcohol, until the first person threw up, and another one fell on the ground in uncontrollable convulsions. Timeline Jump by Joshua Lee 14. So there's been other things that I can't think of right now, but while it's still fresh in my memory, day before yesterday, when getting ready for bed, I was looking for these AirPods in the white case. I could not find them anywhere. I'm a stay-at-home single dad with a 3-year-old, and I usually keep these headphones within arm's reach, either charging or on the TV stand when not in use. I knew I had set them there in the usual spot, but alas, nothing. I searched the house, knowing the whole time where I had left them. I'm home with my baby all day, and our routine is pretty concrete. Well, after an hour of intense searching, I gave up and went to bed. I got up the next day and it began like all the others, when after about 30 minutes of just waking up, there in the usual spot on the TV was the headphones. I got a cold chill instantly, as this is not the only thing that this has happened to, but I can't recall some of the other times as of writing this. No one comes in here. No one has a key. It's just me and my baby. She didn't move them, nor would she have done it just to mess with me. I mean, I look into this one spot, which is just a flat top of the TV stand with a TV on it, at least 8 times the night before. The other thing was the toilet. About a week or so ago, I noticed that the toilet needed cleaning. It wasn't totally gross or anything, but it was time for a scrub, if you know what I mean. Then around 2 days ago, I noticed it was clean. I thought, the hell did I do that? I'm wondering about my level of sanity. But a while ago, I noticed it was dirty again. Dirty again. Like, the misplaced headphones were weird, but the toilet cleaning and the resoiling itself with the exact same patterns of dirt is something I'll never be able to get past. Am I crazy, or has at least one other person experienced something similar? As soon as I heard the gunshots, I grabbed the little girl with a bunny backpack standing next to me and ran into one of the stores in the mall. While peeking from behind the wooden counter, I saw that the shooters were all small children, and then felt something pressed against my head by the little girl behind me. Glitching Pet Parrot, maybe, by Anonymoose. I have a cockatiel named Kobe. I adopted him in January from an animal shelter, and ever since I have experienced what I can only describe as a glitch. This bird seems to duplicate for a couple of seconds, and then duplicate Kobe just disappears. For instance, yesterday I was in my room with him, and he was in the cage playing with some toys, and all of a sudden I can see him take off from the closet, flying across the room, then lands on the curtain rod. At first I thought, oh, okay, he climbed out while I wasn't paying attention. Then I look and he's not on the curtain rod. The bird is still in his cage, happily chewing on his wooden block, and has been for a while considering the amount of damage to it. I know I have horrible eyesight, but there is no way you can mistake a gray and yellow bird with bright orange cheeks flying across the room for anything else. A second instance of him duplicating before our very eyes happened when my mom was in the room with me. Kobe has a ladder that I put across his cage to my bed, that way he can come and go as he pleases. One day when I first got him, my mom and I were in my room having him practice stepping up. For non-bird parents, stepping onto one's finger, so he'd get used to us. He eventually got tired of it, so we put him on the bed to chill out and started having conversation about my wanting to redo my room. Midway through the conversation, my mom stopped mid-sentence and started talking to the bird, who's going up the ladder to his cage. I turned to smile at him, and then I feel a sharp pinch on my toe and yell out. My mom and I both looked down, expecting it to have accidentally found a sewing needle or something with my foot, but it was Colby attacking my foot. We both look at the ladder, and he's not there. There's no way he could have gone from the ladder to the end of my bed without one of us noticing. It's not carbon monoxide. We recently tested at a friend's insistence. So, I have no idea what is going on, but the bird is glitched. It's just a prank, bro. Why are you getting so upset? I continue recording as the man covered in hives struggled to dig the EpiPen out of the peanut butter-filled kiddie pool, making sure my viewers would get a good look at his face when he found out it was fake anyway. Disappearing Dissection Tool by Anonymoose. So I'm 19 and in university. I'm autistic, ADHD, and have general/social anxiety and a history of depression. But I have no history of hallucinations or psychosis. All my issues are neurotypic and medicated for. I don't do drugs in fear of it messing with my anxiety meds. Also, I have no history of bad side effects with my meds. Today I had my final lab in biology class where I dissected a bird. Part of the dissection was taking out a lung, which I needed a probe for. I used the probe to take the lung out, then put the probe on the tray where there was no gunk. When I use tools, I try not to put them back on the workbench to avoid contamination. After finishing the rest of the dissection, I had to dispose of the specimen. In university, you're responsible for cleanup, meaning the TAs will not take your tools when you're done with them. You were also supposed to clean up when you finished with everything, and sharing tools isn't allowed, so there was no reason for any of my tools not to be in the tray. I put the body of the bird on a larger tray as directed, then went to clean up my tools before disposing of the scraps in the biohazard bin. When I took the tools out of the tray, I saw that I had the forceps, the scissors, and scalpel, but no probe. Huh? Maybe I accidentally put it with the bird? Nope. Was it still at my station? On the floor? In someone else's tray? Which isn't allowed, but still. Not at all. I spent a few minutes looking, but then gave up and just focused on the rest of my cleanup. After putting everything away, I looked at my now empty workstation and my partner's too. No probe in sight. So, if my TAs are reading this, sorry, I guess the probe's in the back rooms now. And if someone finds a dissection probe out of nowhere, please clean it up. It may have bird guts on it. My fellow Alpha and I were locked in a tense staring contest. I grossly underestimated his desire to win when he brought out a razor blade and started slicing his eyelids off. Why does this keep happening? By 242, aka me. So I want to start this off with, I don't vape. I have never smoked, vaped, or anything. I tried smoking when I was a teenager, did not like it, and never picked it up. But I now own 3 vapes, and the last one has me shocked. So I had a coworker at my last job that when we met, she didn't vape. She, besides me, has been in the car the most. I gave her rides home, and then near the end of her time working with me, took her to and from work. I won't lie, there are days I miss that and having lunch with her. We talked a lot, but that is not the glitch. Vape 1, the blue vape. It's not a glitch at all. She asked me to take it from her. It was this blue one-time use. It was almost dead, but she didn't want to be tempted with it, so I took it from her, and that was that. Vape 2. This one is a glitch, maybe. She had started hanging out with an old friend who got her back into vaping, and to be fair, she was stressed out. She vaped in high school, but had stopped when we met, and it was only when she started hanging out with this friend she started to vape, which, it happens. We talked over the lunches and stuff about her wanting to quit. She had a vacation coming up, and she said during that she and her friend were going to quit. Her friend didn't, but she did. Well, early on, she had a super stressful week, and we had agreed that I wouldn't let her vape, so I took it from her. I had a windshield cover on the floor in my back seat and put it in there. I remember this because I thought it will be hard to see in the black and she won't find it. Well, that day got worse and she begged me for the vape. I gave in because she was really not okay. I went to grab it and it's not on the cover. She checked under the seat, nothing. I looked through the cover fully and we never found it. We searched for it off and on for about a month till we said my car ate it. Well, she left that job and so did I. This was 6 months to a year later. I cleaned that car fully. And on the back seat, plain as day, under a windshield wiper fluid bottle, is her black vape. My seats are gray and it didn't blend in that great. I had looked on the back seat a few times in our looks because I was planning to give it back to her so she could sell it. I picked up the vape, looked at it, very confused. I took the photo and we both laughed our asses off. She was so happy it went missing in the end. She hasn't started back up and I'm very proud of her for that. If you're hearing this, girl, you're awesome and I'm so happy me and my car could help you kick it. That is all the vapes I knew in my car, 2 sitting in my driver's side cover thing. But now I have 3, so let me tell you the one that I'm 100%'s a glitch. Vape 3. How the hell did I get you? So this Saturday I'm driving home from work. I bought this dashboard phone holder and these little rubber holders fell off. One flew at my leg and I'm looking for it on the seat, between the seat, and then I think maybe it's in the e-brake area. So I sigh and reach in past the weird wire stuff so things can't fall in there, but this car is old and stuff does get in there. I feel this really big odd thing. It's not the rubber thing at all. I carefully grab and pull it out. And here is vape number 3. It's mermaid look and color. My coworker never had this vape that I can recall. I took a photo and she said maybe it's hers, but she doesn't think so, and I don't think it is either. She mostly had the black one, but either way, she only ever lost the black one. I'm also the second owner of this car, more like third, but either way, I have dug into there many times just to make sure it's clear because it's an e-brake and you never know, and I know stuff falls into there. I'm not one to give rides to others all that much. I can name 5 people that have been in my car, and the only one that vaped or smoked besides the original owner was my coworker. And I have put my hand in that e-brake thing a few times. The only thing I can think of is a mechanic dropped it, but my car hasn't been in the shop for months, and I'm sure I checked the e-brake since then. Also, the mechanics I go to are all men, and this is for sure a female vape. I've also officially thrown out all 3 vapes, but I do have on screen right now for you all 3 of them in the order that I told you the story. So yeah, for someone who didn't vape at all, I sure owned a lot of them at one point. Me and my son were asked to take a group selfie after we performed at a Swedish underground nightclub. The group surrounded us as the club owner held up his phone, showing that me and my baby were the only ones visible in the selfie. Customer barely escaped an aggressive harasser. By Chemical Dirt 5586. This happened at my work just a few nights ago, and it definitely felt like the case of being in the right place at the right time. I had just gotten back from my break and was on my way back to my workstation when a middle-aged woman stopped me and asked me for help getting into the store's Wi-Fi. After a few minutes of trying to fiddle with it and troubleshooting, we found that her phone was almost completely without service. She reacted to this with a level of distress that seemed to go above and beyond mere frustration over not being able to use an app. I sensed that something serious was going on, so I asked her, "If you don't mind me asking, what exactly are you trying to do? Maybe I can help you figure out an alternative." She then informs me that she was in an unsafe situation. She mentioned a psycho who had been trying to follow her and said she was trying to call a friend of hers for help. Despite the fact that I'm technically only supposed to use it for work-related purposes on the clock, I immediately offered to let her use my phone, and she gratefully accepted. Her friend luckily picked up the call from my phone. In our conversation with them, I heard her say things like, "I accepted help from someone whose intentions turned out not to be good, and now he's after me. I'm at Walmart. I'm scared he's going to come into the store and find me. Please come pick me up ASAP." After their friend hung up, I asked her if her friend was on their way and if she was going to be okay. She said yes. So I made my way to my workstation after wishing her well. Around 10 minutes later, I saw the woman again passing by my work area, and this time with a man. I hoped and prayed the man was her friend and not her harasser. About another 15 minutes later, the two of them came through my line to check out. I looked for an opportunity to pull the woman aside and discreetly ask her who the man with her was. But before I could do so, an old bald man in a grimy corduroy jumpsuit approached both of them and began very insistently trying to get the woman to get into his car. The man, who I now realize was indeed the woman's friend, stood between the woman and the creep and firmly told him that she would not be going with him. The creep was persistent, and the friend basically had to tell him to screw off before he got the hint and fled. I turned to the woman and spoke. I take it that's the guy who's been bothering you? Damn, he even looked like a creep. Are you okay now? The woman nodded and thanked me for my help in getting in touch with her friend. She then turned to her friend and explained, "She's the one that helped me by letting me use her phone." Her friend turned to me with a smile and asked, "That was you, huh? With the out-of-state number? Well, thank you for helping her. She's a dear friend of mine." I smiled back and assured them both that I was happy to help and glad they were both okay. They finished checking out, and I saw them leave the store without any further trouble. I'm glad I was able to play a part in ensuring her safety. Your Siri implant records every single moment of your life from the day you're born, so when the judge began to play my memory from her murder, I knew it was done for. The memories themselves should be impossible to alter, so, despite being found not guilty, I was more afraid than ever before. Siri had edited the video, and I had a feeling it wasn't to save me. Creepy High School Teacher by Puzzlehead Pen 617. Narrated by Marie's Field of Nightmares.
Hello there, fellow Redditors. For context, this teacher was in his late 50s to 60s and was highly respected in the small central California community that I lived in. He was the AP economics teacher at my high school. This took place about 15 years ago when I was a senior. I remember several weird experiences with this teacher. One day in class, and I don't know how it was brought up, I will call him Mr. Smith, but Mr. Smith decided he was going to give our class a mental exercise. I didn't think anything of it, but then again, I was a pretty innocent and naive teenager at the time. The class went along with it and didn't see an issue with this. I remember him saying he was also a psychology professor at the local university. So anyways, he told the class to close our eyes and meditate for a few minutes and begin thinking about immersing ourselves in a body of water. He said it's okay if we envision a river, a creek, an ocean, or whatever, but he stressed it had to be water we were imagining ourselves in. So I began letting the thoughts come, and I imagined myself next to a creek bed throwing rocks into the water. You can stop now. Open your eyes. The exercise was done. He told us to remember our visions, and he said he was going to ask each of us what we imagined. Mind you, this class was split between girls and boys. So each of us goes around, one by one, and tells the class out loud what we thought about. I remember a boy in my class said he imagined himself in a rushing waterfall. There were girls that mentioned they were swimming in a lake, fishing at the pond, and so on. My turn came, and I told Mr. Smith in our class I imagined myself next to a small creek. I specifically remember he has this weird grin the entire time each of us were telling him what was in our minds during this exercise. Mr. Smith finally told us why he had the class do this exercise. He said the exercise was to measure our sexuality and our sexual awakening. He said the people who envisioned themselves in large bodies of water had a high sex drive, while the students who were in calmer and smaller environments of water hadn't really tapped into their sexuality. The boy who had the vision of being in a waterfall made a joke and the whole class laughed. I just remember thinking it was weird. I looked around at the class and it didn't seem like anyone was uncomfortable. If they were, they didn't voice it or express it. Mr. Creepy also did this thing where he would pick on a student and ask them a very specific question from our economics textbook. If the student didn't give him an answer he liked, he would stare them down for literally what felt like a minute without saying anything. You could feel the tension in the class, and usually the student with the wrong answer would sink down into their seat with humiliation. Anyways, a few months later, I approached Mr. Smith after class and asked him what I could do for extra credit. I only took away a few things from this conversation. I remember him telling me, "You are incredibly smart. I don't think you need extra credit." Okay, but still, I wanted extra credit. So he then says, "I love your shirt. Where'd you get it?" I was wearing a shirt with a unicorn and a yellow yield sign. So I told him I bought it at a thrift store called Red Light, located in Seattle, where I was from. He has his stupid grin again, and I ask, "What is it?" Mr. Smith said, "Red Light is a porn site. Did you know anything about that?" I immediately left. I later looked up the website, and sure enough, there was the porn site he was referring to. Later on in the semester, Mr. Smith stopped coming to class, and we had a substitute for the remainder of the year. I remember the other students whispering in class where Mr. Smith had gone, and some students were saying he got in trouble and was being investigated.
Well, look at you. Aren't you a beautiful thing? He said excitedly. Each limb came from a different person. Each piece of hair was a different color. It took him over a decade to make it, but it was finally complete. Can't you see how much I love you? By Girl Veteran. Quick warning before this story starts. This one does talk about domestic abuse. If this is not something you can listen to or want to listen to, please skip to the next story. I do have timestamps for that for you guys. When I first got out of the army, I was in a relationship with a guy in the 3rd Ranger Battalion. Let's call him Jim. Jim Radis. He and I had an apartment together, and I thought I loved him. So instead of going back to my house in Nebraska, I stayed in Columbus, Georgia. Our relationship started out with him being what I thought was protective over me. Even though I was very attractive at the time, I had very low self-esteem because of an assault I experienced while I was living in the barracks and the bullying I endured afterwards. Things moved very quickly. In fact, we were inseparable from the night we met. Anytime another man would look at me, he would get very confrontational towards the guy. I felt safe and protected by this. It made me feel special. I thought he must really value me if he would get upset by a guy looking my way. At first. Soon we would be out at the bar, he would get hammered every time, and act very nasty towards me if he thought I was looking at another guy. This would cause bitter fights, and I would always end up in the fetal position in bed, sobbing. But still, I stayed. The next day, he would always apologize, make excuses about it being because he was so drunk. But then he would proceed to explain to me why what I had done was wrong. It wasn't long before I found myself totally isolated from my friends and family. Because he was so insecure, he made me take all of my phone calls on speakerphone. My family begged me to leave, but I was afraid I couldn't get by on my own. Then one night, we came home from the bar in the usual fashion, him screaming in my face and me sobbing. I told him I was going to get a room at a motel, and he lost his freaking mind. He yanked the key out of the ignition and threw them into the woodlands. He then got out of my car and proceeded to kick in the front corner panel of my car. He used so much force that the hinge to the passenger door were bent. I told the insurance company it was a hit and run, or I never would have been able to get the damage fixed. He screamed at me to get inside the apartment, but I couldn't unlock the door without my keys, which he blamed me for. He then grabbed me and started to shove me into the front door, first by my shoulder, then with his hands around my throat, screaming, "Can't you see how much I love you?" I rasped, "No, I can't." He let go, and I fell to the ground in a heap. That night, I had finally had enough. I was finally so angry that I didn't feel afraid anymore. That morning, while he was sleeping it off, I began to make my plans. I started by telling him he had to leave and move back into the barracks. When he refused, I had to get his chain of command involved to make him leave the apartment and go to live in the barracks or on someone's couch in the street, just as long as he wasn't with me. He stalked me relentlessly. I filed for an OP, but he bullied me into dropping it. I knew I'd never be free of him if I stayed. So my parents sent me money via Western Union. This was 2002, and I rented a Persec truck and trailer. Got help from neighborhood guy friends to load it up as soon as the sun set, and I brought it from where I was hiding it. My best chance was to leave under the cover of darkness. I was really sick that night. I was running a fever of 103 degrees, but I knew it had to be then. It couldn't wait. I just told myself I had to get out of the city limits, then I could pull over and sleep a little bit. I figured I would just drive as much as I could and then rest when I couldn't push any harder. I put my puppy in the cab of the truck with me, towing my car behind the truck, and left. I don't know how, except through divine intervention, but somehow I managed to drive non-stop from Fort Benning, Georgia, to my parents' home in rural Nebraska. I stopped only for fuel, at which time I would feed, water, and walk my little dog, Scruffy, use the facilities, and get food and drink I could afford on my meager budget. I drove 14 hours and pulled into my parents' drive around 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. I crashed on their old couch and slept for nearly 24 hours straight. I still hope nothing for pain and suffering for him. He turned me on to pills, then coke, then crack, all while he was still on active duty. He was a scumbag of a soldier and a man. He reached out to me on social media a couple of years ago. I told him what a piece of steaming shit he was, and I told him to rot in hell. It felt amazing, even after all these years, to say that to him and have him the one stammering. I'm actually glad he reached out to me and gave me the opportunity to verbally rip him to shreds. I'm not afraid of you anymore, Jim. So let's not ever meet again. The old fortune-telling woman told me I'd die by drowning, so I spent my life avoiding water. As the doctor struggled to drain the fluid building in my lungs and the sensation of slowly drowning overwhelms me, I suddenly wish I just enjoyed the beach before suffering the inevitable. Summer of 2009 was horrible. by Anonymoose. Narrated by Marie's Field of Nightmares.
So this happened when I was 15 and my little sister was 12. Little backstory here. We lived in this small town for several years and it was safe. A few years into living there, we had a cop with his wife and kid move in 2 houses down from us. Our house was built sometime in the 1920s. This is a different town than my previous post, by the way. A few nights before this incident, our other siblings locked us out of the back door. Us being idiots, we kicked the back door in. The door didn't budge, but the frame came out of the wall and the door was just hanging. One of our blinds were broken. We didn't have the money to fix it, seeing as my parents had 8 kids and money was tight growing up. Anyways, the blinds were broken behind our TV. On the other side of the window was our garage and our driveway. Next to the driveway, on our neighbor's property, which was abandoned, had tall shrubs. What we didn't know was there was 2 people hiding in the shrubs watching us. I'm gonna leave some details out to make a long story short. My little sister's name will be Candace. My name will be Aria. It was summer of 2009. My oldest brother and his girlfriend was a mile from our house fishing about 10 at night. All of our siblings and parents were asleep. Besides my oldest brother out with his girlfriend fishing, I was sitting in front of the TV watching TV. Candace was sitting on the bed watching TV with me. All of a sudden, Candace and I heard a very loud crashing noise from the back door. We both screamed. We got up, ran to the phone, and called our brother's cell phone. He said he was on the way back because his girlfriend twisted her ankle. He gets home. By this point, we woke everyone up in the house and had all the lights on. My brother tells us to stay in the house. My brother is 6'4", 300 pounds. Unknown to my family, I slipped outside to check with my brother. I know this was stupid of me to do, but I was a curious kid. I saw my brother being really quiet. He ran back to our fenced-in backyard. He gets within arm's reach of this guy, and he steps on a stick. The guy turns and looks back at my brother and takes off running and hops the fence, and he got away, sadly. I didn't see this because I went back into the house after a while. My brother comes in. He tells everyone what he saw and that it was a guy in all black and he's about 6 foot. That is all he saw. The rest of the night was all calm. My brother on high alert though. The next night, my brother was out with his girlfriend, wherever they were at that time. It was again about 10 at night. Candace and I were watching TV again in the same spot as last time. Again, we hear a loud crash coming from the back door. We screamed again and called our brother's cell phone. He came home again. The whole house was awake again and all the lights were on. My brother goes out and checks it out. This time, he didn't see anyone out there. I forgot to mention both of these times, we looked at the back door. Both times the back door looked like it was kicked in really hard. This time around the frame was out of the wall more. The door was leaning further into the house. We didn't make a police report because we had a cop that lived 2 houses down from us. While he was at work, us kids would help take care of his pregnant wife, bring her over food, play with their kids. We didn't really see him much. And when we did, he was very sweet and nice. But anyways, we told the police officer what had happened. He told us that he thinks there's 2 guys and that they've been stalking our house and watching us. The cop comes over and checks and looks. He said, I believe there's 2 guys. One is the lookout and hides right here in the shrubs. He keeps lookout while the other one does the possible breaking in. He said they had to have been looking through our broken blinds. He said at night they could look in and you couldn't see anything if you looked out. After those 2 nights, there was no attempted break-ins anymore. Fast forward to the fall of that year, our cop neighbor told us. He said, "I'm not supposed to tell you this, but we caught a peeping Tom. He's in jail now, about 20 or so miles away." He said that after the peeping Tom was caught, it all stopped and the town was safe again because of it. Candace and I were so freaked out and scared. To this day, her and I have to have all of our doors and windows locked. We check multiple times a day. If any of our curtains are open, we get scared. We close the curtains every time. I'm honestly afraid that it'll happen again. We no longer live in that town, but that thought is still there. Sorry, this is a long post. To this day, we don't know what their intentions were. I think if he would have gotten in, we wouldn't be here today. This is all just scary.
After the event, desperate and dehydrated, I stared at the one edible item I found in the abandoned house, a large jar of canola oil. After I began to chug it, I cried as I realized it was just someone's old urine, but I kept drinking because it's all I had. It's been 5 years since that relationship, and I still haven't dated anyone since. By Anonymoose. Quick warning before this story starts, this one does talk about domestic abuse. If this is not something you can listen to or want to listen to, please skip to the next story. I do have timestamps for that for you guys. I was a sophomore in high school, and I fell head over heels for the new quiet guy, and I thought he was my forever. Crazy, but I would actually go on marrying down the road just 1 week after graduation. High school sweethearts. Looking back now, I can see how many red flags I noticed but ignored because I was a young, eagerly waiting to grow up. Fast forward. The night before my wedding day, I was going over last-minute wedding details with Mom, who is easily one of the most caring and selfless people I know, so bless my sweet mama's heart when I asked her if she'd be mad if I decided I didn't want to go through with the wedding. The wedding was, of course, the next day. But, me being me, Mom thought I was messing with her. I couldn't tell her the truth of what was going on now, so I took a deep breath and forced a believable chuckle. She generally thought I was pulling another one of my jokes. I went on to finally tell her the truth almost a year after I escaped him, and she still feels bad about not taking it seriously. No one knew what was going on behind closed doors, but makes sense. I was honestly his biggest PR team. Only 2 hours passed saying I do's, and he was throwing me out of the truck in my parents' driveway, cursing and yelling that he wanted divorce. Recklessly driving off, so much for all that honeymoon phase on our actual honeymoon. I ran inside and my dad came out of the bedroom, and he can't understand a word I'm saying, but he's trying to basically ask me what was happening, and I say it as clear as I could while uncontrollably sobbing. He left me! How could he on our honeymoon? My dad is pissed, but then relaxes and tries to rationalize the situation. Like, maybe he forgot something, pulled a bad joke, or something like that. Then we see his truck flying in on our driveway, and my dad smiles, saying, "See, he's right there." I wipe my tears and walk out the door and tell him yes, it was a prank. Inside, I was screaming. I was so embarrassed for myself because now I look crazy. But if I wanted to save this relationship, they could never know the truth. Months go by and he starts being sweeter ever since we had to be long distance because he was in the military at training. But as soon as I would pack up my life and move to Texas with him, I could tell my parents were starting to see the cracks I had worked so hard to glue together. My mom even picked up my phone on the table, mistaking it for hers, and saw this huge message from my ex and just started crying, begging me to stay because he was not a good person. But I assured her that this was way out of character for him, a lie, and that he was just lonely. I knew she didn't believe me, but she also knew I was stubborn and was going to do whatever, regardless of her concerns. Just a few weeks in Texas, I knew my life was in danger. It was Thanksgiving Day, and my family just called to check up on us and just tell us Happy Thanksgiving. And the moment I hung up, the man that I thought was my soulmate started cursing at me, saying that I needed to stop talking to my family because he was my family now. I let out a little chuckle, thinking he got to be joking, and he picked up our wedding glasses. I specifically had them made for us, and throws them directly at me, shattering around me. Shocked, I didn't know what to do, so I walked over to the broom and started sweeping up the broken glass. You may be hearing this and think, surely he had been done throwing a tantrum by now, but no. He then throws picture frames at me while I'm sweeping up the glass. Honestly, that broken glass on that wooden floor was just a metaphor for any love I had left towards this man. I broke that night. I stopped seeing him as my other half, and more as the monster I'm now stuck with. I became very depressed, and he loved that. He would break me down over and over again just to get a reaction. 2 months go by, and one night he completely lost his shit over the washer and dryer people messing up the day they were supposed to come out, and he starts pacing back and forth, mumbling words I can't quite make out, but demanding that I call and fix it, grabbing me and sat me down on the couch, telling me what to say and that I better not fuck it up. Like a damn negotiation. This man was paranoid as fuck, making comments that they were doing it because he was a soldier, then started blaming me even though I wasn't even around him when he first called in the first place, but still yelled at me for hours until, snap, he walked to the bedroom. Me? I'm on the couch still processing this fucking moment. Tommy, you're so fucking stupid. This is your fault. Did you plan this with the workers just to make me look dumb? Or are you really just that fucking dumb? Huh, you stupid fucking bitch? Him again. That's what I fucking thought, you fucking no good, ungrateful bitch. Myself. You know what? I'm done. You won't do anything except for complain and bitch at me, blaming me for everything. All you do is curse and yell at me for no damn good reason. He looked at me with the look that I have heard other victims try to describe, and the best I can describe it is a darkness in his eyes, like an emptiness that still causes me nightmares to this day. Without hesitation, he lunged at me in the middle of the day with our curtains open, door wide open, neighbors out and about. He throws me against the wall and starts choking me. I slowly see black, but he lets go for a second. Just then, he slams my entire body to the floor. At the moment, I either blacked out or my brain was trying to shield myself from what was happening. But piece by piece, I would come to, and he was holding me by my shoulders and just repeatedly slammed me on the wooden floor. My screams ignored by the people outside. I plead for anyone to call the police and repeat yelling for help over and over. My fight or flight takes over and I choose flight. I run to the main bathroom and lock the door, frantically calling my mom because at that moment I just want to hear her voice, unsure that it would be my last. But my poor mom didn't know the nightmare of that phone call until it was too late. She was with my sister and my dad, and she puts me on speakerphone because we usually do this so that all of us can talk like we're all together. But instead, they hear me screaming for my life and hear my ex calling me awful names and telling me to get my ass in there and to unlock the door. They were confused and my dad was ready to come and kill this asshole himself. But then, silence. No more banging, just me softly crying and just trying to calm my mother over the phone and tell her that I'm alright, and I now know I need to leave him, but I have to do it in the safest way possible, because if he were to catch me, I may not make it out with my life. When I walk out of the room, my ex is just sitting there with a blank stare, like nothing had happened. This was a theme throughout our 3-year relationship, but I could no longer ignore the escalation of his behavior. So, one night, I put my escape plan into action. I was going to make a run for it. It was 2 a.m. Keys to my Pontiac were on the kitchen table, and he was asleep in the bedroom that I wasn't allowed in for several days earlier. I busted out of the guest bedroom that was my prison and beelined out of the front door quietly, but also as quickly as possible. 9.5 hours to my home state, only stopping once in Dallas to fill up on gas. With every mile in my rearview mirror, I felt something inside that reassured me. I'm free now. Forever scared, but most have healed and faded. I 100% believe that had I stayed, I'd be 6 feet deep. So, to my abusive ex-husband that I fled from that late February night, let's not meet again. Ever. Mercy dogs would alert the medics to the location of wounded soldiers and sometimes even drag the soldiers towards safety. I was so glad when Lucky found me and started dragging me towards the trench that lay beneath the Red Cross tent, but confused as to why she stopped short and started nuzzling my hand. On a New York Train with a Creepy Man by Anonymoose. This happened back in 2018. I was 24 and my sister was 25. We are both native New Yorkers, and there are plenty of stories I have. I think we all know New York is strange. Anyways, we are both on a crowded train going to meet up with a friend. There were no seats, so we're holding on to the pole. It was already a tight squeeze, but this man and this woman, non-related, got on and held the pole that my sister and I were both holding. We're talking, and I notice the man directly in front of us keeps on looking at us. Like, really looking. I'm already feeling uncomfortable as it is, and it's hard not to pay attention. I try to ignore it by talking to my sister. By the way, we are nowhere near our destination. A couple of train stops later, he eventually says to us, "Are you guys sisters?" We both look at one another, feeling awkward, and I'm like, yeah? At this point, I'm praying that the train would hurry up to the next stop so we can get off. I know my sister is thinking the same. The other girl is looking at us, and she looks uncomfortable. He smiles and seems to get excited, if you know what I mean. He then says to us, "Oh yeah, you guys are sisters," in an incredibly perverted tone. He licks his lips and keeps looking from my sister to me, back and forth. At this point, the girl gives us an awkward smile and looks just as terrified as we do. I can tell this man is getting really excited by the fact that we are sisters and comments how beautiful we are. My sister looks at me and we see a stop coming up. We both know it's not our stop, but we're leaving the train. He keeps trying to talk to us and we keep ignoring him, and as soon as the doors open, we leave that train. Again, I've been in many weird and uncomfortable situations, but the fact that he was literally so close to us with his perverted smile, his excited eyes, and excited, you know what. Yeah, I'm glad we were able to get away from him safely. Thankfully, he didn't follow us. Knowing the only chance at a cure would come from future technology, I contacted a ship to slowly lower me towards a black hole on a long cable. When I finally returned thousands of years later, I was told my idea had caught on, and that almost everyone, including all the doctors, had tried the same trick to get a glimpse of the future. And now the stories have come to an end. If you're still awake, well, I hope you fall asleep shortly. And the sounds that you hear in the background are going to take center stage for no more than 30 minutes to help you fall asleep or stay asleep. But if you are awake and want to hear more stories, I do have playlists for that as well. Sleep tight and don't let 42 bite.